What's up guys, it's Alex here, your friendly reef dog. And today I'm going to tell you the top 6 pieces of equipment you don't need when you're setting up a reef tank. Now if this is your first time here and you want weekly reefing goodness, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on anything. Right, let's get stuck in. First on my list of equipment you don't need is Radions, and what I really mean by that is expensive lights in general. Premium lights will of course grow coral and make your tank look great, but so will pretty much all other mainstream lights and probably some non-mainstream lights too. Now there is an argument that you'll be future-proofing yourself for when you inevitably upgrade your system, but the reality is that is likely to be a very long way away, and as you grow in the hobby, what you want from lights will likely change. In a year's time you might find you prefer a larger light with more spread or the colour and shimmer of Kessels. And even if you do decide you must have Radions, as they've just brought out a new Gen 5 unit, there are plenty of bargains to be had on hardly used Gen 4 units. And it's not like they became a bad light overnight. You shouldn't underestimate how good most LED lights are, and in my opinion spending £300 more on lights won't make £300 worth of difference. Particularly given the corals you're likely to keep at first are not particularly high demand in terms of light. So think long and hard about getting cheaper lights from the likes of Red Sea, MaxSpect and Reef Breeders or Evergrow. Number 5 on my list of equipment you don't need is a big one, aquarium controllers. Aquarium controllers like the Neptune Apex and GHL Proflux allow you to constantly monitor things like salinity, temperature and pH, and to centralise control of all your other equipment like your pumps and your lights. They can also alert you when something is wrong, which could avoid a potential disaster. But in all honesty they are absolutely not essential, and when you're new to the hobby they'll only really serve to add a layer of complication to your first tank. I've had 4 tanks over the years and I'm yet to experience a problem that would have been avoided by an aquarium controller. And while I'm not saying they don't have their place, for your first tank the better alternative is a heating controller. Heaters are supposedly the most common point of failure in tanks, but heating controllers are much more reliable, so take away one of the biggest risks. It's a simple device that you just plug your heater into and set it to accurately maintain and display your tank temperature. A heating controller will allow you to keep your tank at a more stable temperature than a heater on its own, and you can plug a bank of fans into it that will cool your tank in the summer if it starts to overheat. Next up is a brand new skimmer, and of all the items you can buy second hand, skimmers are probably the safest bet because there's very little that can go wrong. As long as there's no physical damage, the only electric part is the pump, and in my experience skimmer pumps don't often fail, and when they do, you can often easily get replacement parts. As well as that, choosing the right skimmer first time up is not as easy as you think, and even if you do get it right, if your stocking plans change, you might need to upsize or downsize your skimmer. Now designs haven't changed massively over the years with skimmers, so you're probably not missing out on huge performance gains that come with new skimmers. A fantastic way to spend some of the money you save on a new skimmer is an RODI filter. It'll allow you to filter your own water to use for topping off your fresh water and mixing up your salt water. Not only will it save you money over buying water from your local fish shop, but crucially it also allows you to have control over the quality of water you use, which you won't get if you buy your water from your local fish shop. First on the podium of equipment you don't need is Ecotech powerheads and return pumps. Now at this point you'd be forgiven for thinking this is an anti-Ecotech list, but it really isn't. I have 3 MP40 powerheads and a Vectra L1 pump on my tank and I think they're great. But for a first tank, and maybe even on most tanks, they don't necessarily add the value they'll cost you. Having a battery backup option like you get with Ecotech pumps is great, but the chances of you needing it are actually pretty minute. And there are loads of other pumps that will move just as much water for a lot less money. My suggestion is pumps made by Jecod. I use a Jecod return pump to run some of my filters, and I have a Jecod powerhead in my frag tank. They're controllable and directional, and the new models are pretty damn quiet. They're also crucially about 1/3 of the cost of Ecotech pumps, and they achieve the same end result of providing your corals with the flow they need. Second on the podium is automatic filter rollers. Filter rollers polish your water and remove particles of food before they have a chance to break down and soil your water. And because they rotate their rollers automatically as they clog, they save you the hassle of having to change filter socks all the time, which I will admit is a massive ball ache. But the vast majority of tanks don't run them, and an automatic filter roller is well and truly into bonus territory when it comes to setting up a reef tank. The obvious alternative to a filter roller is filter socks, but I've never been a fan of them because they're too much of a faff to regularly change and wash. So the better alternative is filter cups with filter floss. Filter floss is cheap as chips, so all you need to do is remove the stuff and replace it once a week, which is much less bother than filter socks. And as a Brucey bonus, I'd also recommend you get some activated carbon. As you freshwater graduates will know, activated carbon can make your water look crystal clear, which of course is one of the benefits of a filter roller. Activated carbon is one of the very few cheap things you can add to your tank that will have an instant impact on the way it looks. And number one on my list of equipment you don't need is a brand new tank. When you're setting up your first tank, it can be very tempting to get a shiny new tank like a Red Sea Reefer. But that's just so unnecessary, and the single biggest saving you can make is by getting a second-hand aquarium. You should easily be able to save at least 50% of the cost of your tank, even if the tank you get is only a year or so old. Most people take good care of their aquariums, but even if the glass is scratched, the scratches probably won't be visible once you put water in. And tanks like Red Sea Reefers have laminated wood stands which are resistant to water damage. Now there are plenty of second-hand options on eBay, which tells you why it's a good idea to go second-hand. There's every chance you won't take to the hobby in the first place and will regret spending the big bucks on your first and last tank. When you set up your first tank, you should probably get everything second-hand, but you should absolutely get the tank second-hand. If you get the marine bug, it's almost certain you'll upgrade, and I can promise you'll want something better when you have a year's knowledge under your belt. So my advice would be to save yourself a fortune and target your upgrade as your first brand new tank. Now it's worth me pointing out that I of course don't mean that the items in this list are bad. I have an automatic filter roller myself, as well as some of the other pieces of equipment that I've mentioned, and many people swear by having an aquarium controller. But when you're setting up your first tank, it's very easy to assume that getting all the best equipment will make life easier for you. But the reality is that the amount of money you spend on equipment is not going to be the limiting factor in the success of your aquarium. A conscientious and dedicated aquarist with a small budget will end up with a much better aquarium than a hands-off reefer with a fistful of dollars. If you enjoyed the video, then please give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next week. If you didn't enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down and subscribe for next week anyway, and come back and thumbs down that video. And until next time, happy reefing.